I'm standing here in the port of Cenchrea once again, summarizing all of our lessons. I'm actually going to read the emailed lesson I sent to all of you that are taking our Life and Letters of Paul course. These are all the lessons, the conclusion and the application. So I just thought, why not stand here in the water after teaching a lesson and give you all the conclusions at once. So here we go. 6 truths from this site that God can use in our lives. And what I'd suggest to you is right here at the front, you have a copy of these, and those of you that are watching online, you can get a copy of them. They're down in the notes of the video. But as you watch this, don't try and do everything. Why not pick one thing I'm talking about, one application, one truth, and say, Lord, that's what I'd like in my life. So here we go. Number 1, lessons from Acts 18:18. That's where we are, right here in Cenchrea. One lesson from Romans chapter 16, 1 and 2, as we learned about Phoebe. One lesson from the second missionary journey of Paul. By the way, you know, Paul sailed from here to go home. This is his farewell to the saints at Corinth, his farewell to all those he ministered to here, right from this dock that's behind me. But think about all the truths that we've learned in these lessons. Number 1, we learned that God uses surrendered people. If Paul hadn't surrendered to the Lord on the road to Damascus, we wouldn't have what we have in the New Testament. If Phoebe hadn't surrendered to the Lord from the congregation here in Cenchrea, we wouldn't have had what we have in the book of Romans. God uses surrendered people. Application: do you surrender anew and afresh every day? For me, I rehearse in my mind Romans 12, 1 and 2 regularly. I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your body as an offering to the Lord, a living sacrifice. How does God use your body? By transforming our mind through His Word. God uses, number 1, surrendered people. Number 2, the second lesson is Paul made sacred vows. Do you remember when I talked about him taking a vow right here in Cenchrea and cutting his hair and heading to Jerusalem? What was he doing? He was doing what we call a Nazirite vow. He was taking a sacred vow of sacrifice to the Lord, and he was offering to the Lord what he could give to Him, his devotion. Now, for just a moment, have you ever made a sacred vow to the Lord? Let me just read to you an example of some that are in the Bible, okay? Because this is what Paul would have been thinking about. Paul knew the Bible backward and forward, and this is an example of some sacred vows from the Scripture. Psalm, here it is, 101. Now, a sacred vow in the Scripture is when one of the saints in the Old Testament prays to the Lord and declares something that they're going to do. Like, I want to obey you, or I will serve you, or I will offer my, whatever. It's a declaration of a choice that's made. That's a sacred vow to the Lord. That, Lord, I will do this, I want to do that, whatever. This is what David had as the backdrop of his life. In verse 2 of Psalm 101, I will behave wisely in a perfect way. What David said is, I'm going to walk through life your way, even though no one else is like that. That was a sacred vow. Here's another one. Verse 3, this is an important one in the 21st century. I will set nothing wicked before my eyes. Now there, we could stop right there. Students, 70% of you watching this are young men. That's the audience on YouTube. I get the statistics every week. 70% of you are between this age and this age on YouTube. Have you ever made a sacred vow to the Lord of Psalm 101, verse 3? I will set nothing wicked before my eyes. You know what that means? I will not look at the things that offend God on my mobile device. Did you know everything that Jesus promised He can do, He will empower in your life if you just ask Him and cling to Him and believe that what He said is true? David said, I'm going to set nothing wicked before my eyes. Look at this, verse 4. I will not know deeply wickedness. You know what he said? I'm going to limit my exposure to things that are wicked. I think of the games, I think of the movies, I think of the music, I think of the entertainment of our world. It's not just setting nothing wicked before your eyes. It's not having long exposure to wickedness where it doesn't even offend us. Did you know wickedness always offends God? It doesn't offend us when we get desensitized to it. You know what? You can read all the rest of Psalm 101. There are about 6 sacred vows that David made there. What was Paul's? Paul said, I'm going to offer my life as an offering to you. And he took an offering and actually offered a sacrifice, a devotion sacrifice, like he was a living sacrifice in Jerusalem. But you don't have to go to Jerusalem, you don't have to cut your hair, and you don't have to come to Cenchrea. Right where you are. Number 2, application. You can make a sacred vow to God. A simple one I have is that I'm going to be reading God's Word every day, that I'm going to limit my time in the electronic world so I have time for God. Okay, number 1, application. God uses surrendered people. Number 2, make some sacred vows today. Here's the 3rd one. Paul lived a transformed life in the shadow of the world. Now, look at what's out here. You can just see kind of rocks that are sticking out of the water. Do you know what was here? Right where I'm standing, there was a 40-foot high column with a 5-foot high capital, and on top of that, a roof of a temple. There was a temple right here to Poseidon. There was a temple right over there to Isis. These are false gods. Paul walked out in the shadow of this overpowering Roman world and said, I am God's servant. I'm living in the presence of pagan religions as reflected by the temples of the harbor. I'm living the transformed life of Christ in spite of everyone else around him not. Do you know what that is? That's standing alone for God. Paul stood alone for God, even when every building and every person around him wasn't. You say, that's impossible. Yes, it is. But Christ in you makes it possible. Christ in you makes it possible to surrender. Christ in you makes it possible to make a sacred vow. Christ in you makes it possible to stand alone. Here's the 4th lesson in your notes. Use every tool God gives you. What tool was Paul using right here? Well, number 1, he was using the papyri manuscript process to write and take that letter and put it as a vehicle to communicate and send it by sea travel and by land travel. Do you know what the vehicles are we have today? The electronic world. You know what's amazing? I'll tell you a quick story. What I'm doing right now, I'm teaching this class, but when this class is over, it's going to be uploaded to YouTube and it's going to be available. I just got a note from someone in a little tiny island. I had to get Google out and find it. And you know what the person said? I'm in your class. I know English. I'm taking the class. I can never leave my island. Don't have any money. Don't have a good job. But you said I can serve the Lord. Actually, the Lord did, but he heard me say it. And he said, I'm going through online on my mobile device. I'm studying the Bible. I'm going to serve the Lord. Use every tool available to you. Paul used the vast Roman transportation system. There were 54,000 miles of Roman roads, and he walked them from one end of the empire to the other. Paul used all of these navigational routes where he could sail boats between cities that he was speaking at. He sailed from here to go to his home church. He used all the tools available to him. What tools are available to you? Use them. Dedicate them to the Lord. Number 1, God uses surrendered people. Number 2, Paul made sacred vows. Number 3, Paul lived a life transformed by standing alone for God. Number 4, use every tool that God gives you. Number 5, our choices matter to God. How do I know that? Because right here, Paul found a barber in Cenchrea that would cut his hair off. and he took that hair, and actually part of the vow, the Nazarite vow, was to take your hair to the temple to show that you completely were shaving your head to offer to God this offering. And so Paul made a choice. Now, Nazarite vows and temple and offerings, that's also foreign to us. But making a choice, that's not. I make choices all day long, little ones. You know what? Your choices impact widely everything to do with your eternal immortal soul. All God is collecting is the result of all of our choices. He's recording that. And someday we're going to stand before him at his judgment seat, and he's going to run every choice you and I make through the fire. Remember the lesson in Corinth, 2 Corinthians chapter 5? Do you remember standing at the Bema seat? We talked about that. Do you remember that whole class on the rewards of believers? And our choices matter to God. Paul's choice right here to make that sacred vow and cut his hair mattered to God. Do you know what it did? It pleased God. Because he accepted. You know what Paul said? He said, you've received my offering as a fragrant offering in your nostrils. What he's saying is, God, you can smell the fragrance of this offering. Here's the last lesson before we go. Your life touches others. This is what I wrote, this lesson. The port of Cenchrea reminds us that what we do touches others. The way that our life touches others, like the sea touch all lands, the ripple effect, we need to realize that if we make and keep sacred vows, like our personal devotions, our prayers, our verse memorizing, and our witnessing. I just got a note from someone I talked to in 1979. Most of you listening to this weren't even alive then. I was a college kid in 79. I went to a laundromat in 1979 in the city of Clemson, South Carolina. And I went there to that laundromat looking for students from Clemson University to share the gospel with. And I walked up to this guy that was folding all of his stuff out of the dryer, and I stood there while he was folding and said, hey, can I talk to you? He says, I have nothing else to do. Of course you can talk to me. And I shared with him the plan of salvation from God's word. And then I took out a gospel tract out of my pocket, I wrote my name on it, and I gave it to him, and I said, what would keep you from receiving Jesus Christ as your Savior? And he said, not right now. And I looked at my watch. I had spent 2 hours out on the streets and at the laundromat witnessing, and I said, okay, I have to go. There's the track, and I left. Just a few months ago, let's see, 1979, 21, 42 years went by. And I got a note on YouTube. And he said, I was on YouTube. He said, I'm learning and growing. I'm a Christian. And he said, I was on YouTube. And he said, I started listening to you, and you told a story about how you used to go to Clemson and Seneca and Walhalla and share the gospel. And he said, you even said that you talked to people in laundromats, and you told that whole story on YouTube. And I did. I tell stories to illustrate things. And he said, I'm the person you talked to at that laundromat in Clemson. The athlete folding his clothes in the dryer. Did you know our choices we make in life ripple on and touch others? So let me go through the list. Number 6, our life touches others. Start touching others, share the gospel. Our choices matter to God. Make little choices to get in the Word, to pray, to say no to sin. Number 4, use every tool God gives you. Whether therefore you eat or drink or do photography or web programming or art or music or sports or whatever you do all to the glory of God. Use that tool for Him. Live a transformed life in the shadow of the world. Stand alone for God. Number 2, make some sacred vows. Number 1, God uses surrendered people. As I stand here in the Cenchrea harbor, at the end of Paul's second missionary journey, I'm imploring you, why not surrender to the Lord and see what He does with your life? There's no limit to what God can do through you. I hope you'll surrender to him today. Thanks for joining our course. Thanks for this review time you've let me give to you of our Life and Letters of Paul classes. But I hope you've taken one of these applications and said, that's what I want, Lord, today. I surrender to you. God bless you. Looking forward to hearing from you one of these days.